Oh, hey guys, this is Pecker Knight Ryan D-Bar. I was able to save up all year and buy a new shirt at Christmas time. This is a replica of a French World War I Army uniform. I bought it at the French Army Museum in Paris when I was there. Um, I just like to buy things at museums that I like to try to support their mission. It's not that I will ever wear this anywhere but on this video. Anyway, it's one of these videos that I question, whether I should even really make this video. And I just have no desire to fight with anybody at this point. I'm trying to learn to persuade people by emphasizing points of agreement rather than criticizing them when they're wrong or I think they're wrong. It might just be too late in my life to change. I don't know. I feel like sometimes, though, people are just so wrong it needs to be called out. I'm talking right now about someone who is boasting about their data driven approach to city zoning. And they're from my hometown, Clarksburg, West Virginia. That's planning and zoning is something I kind of introduced the importance of to a lot of current people. And it feels like they're waving a target in my face by saying things I don't fully agree with. I do agree with some of it, and I'll get to that later on. And I'm talking about the corner of the campaign ad that I made my thumbnail by the current vice mayor of Clarksburg, Jerry Riffle. I don't like to, name names, but it's who it is. So he says density reduces cost. For who? For who? Please don't say it reduces cost for the city or for the local government because that's just false. It's not true. You know, all of you from Clarksburg or that area, just think with me for a moment. If you're not from that area, you can tune out, you can keep watching, whatever. Clarksburg in 1960 census had 35,000 people. Today, it's under 15,000. So the density of Clarksburg has been cut in half. But back when it was bigger, did Clarksburg struggle to keep its fire engines running? And replace its water pipes? No, it did not struggle. Does the Clarksburg of today, of 2025, struggle keeping fire engines running and replacing water pipes? Yes, they do. I've said this before. Within the last couple years, there was a point in which the city of Clarksburg, city of 15,000 people in the United States of America, did not have a working fire engine. They were responding to fires in a flatbed pickup truck with a hose on the back. So, look, that should be enough argument right there. Density does not, a lower density does not bring in more money. It doesn't save you money. If it did, you wouldn't be so bad off. I mean, it's common sense. If you lay 1,000 linear feet of 4-inch water pipe, you'd rather have 50 paying customers tied in than 20 customers. When I was in high school, back in, it's been over 3 decades now, Harrison County schools offered French, Spanish, Latin, German, and Japanese. I just looked to double check myself. Now it's just French and Spanish. Even at highly regarded Bridgeport High School only offers French and Spanish. All across the state of West Virginia, public schools are closing. Part of that is, of course, due to charter schools and money being bled out of the system to private entities. But an even bigger part of that, probably, is the population loss. Lower density means smaller schools, which means more bus routes driving more miles, means more money spent on gas and less for teachers, and just less money overall in the system to go around. That should be the end of the conversation, really. Folks who are from Appalachia know all about population loss and the problems it brings to the city budget. It's hard to imagine anyone involved in a city government not understanding this and saying something that's just completely 100% opposite of what we all know, but I'm going to keep beating this zombie horse a little bit longer. If low density housing saved government's money, then why are all or almost all the public housing projects all over the world high density or higher density than the neighborhoods around them? I mean, don't governments know that single family homes are cheaper? No, they don't know that because it's not true. It's wrong. I've always read people in Clarksburg say, well, we need to copy what Bridgeport does. Because the problem with poor people is that they don't live like rich people, right? If they just went out and spent money and did things like rich people did, they wouldn't be poor anymore. That's how it works, right? Read Bridgeport's comprehensive plan. Excuse me. It says right there that they need to pursue infill housing development. That's building houses on these little odd lots and, those few acres over there across the creek nobody really wanted to touch till now. That's infill development. And the reason is that their population density is too low to support their existing infrastructure. There's a science to this, and city planners and consultants that the city hired said your infrastructure costs are pretty high on a per capita basis. You need to get more people living in there. More people on the same amount of roads means less tax, less expense per person. It's not rocket surgery. Let's move on. I want to talk about whether or not lower density raises property values. I used to walk to work, but these days I usually work a little ways out of town, kind of too far to walk, so I ride a bus. And it turns out to be a reasonably long bus ride sometimes. I either doze off or I read a book. Just this morning I read a chapter in a book talking about the illusion that lower density housing raises the property values of that in the area. As early as 1948, the federal government recognized that this was not usually, generally, most often true. There's cases where it does. It excludes poor people and it makes an exclusive community. But in general, it doesn't work like that. And it certainly doesn't work like that when you talk about raising the property tax base. Go back to Bridgeport again. Think about it. I looked it up. I looked these numbers up multiple ways to make sure I'm actually getting the proper data. Average single family home price in Bridgeport, West Virginia is about $300,000. And the average single family home in Bridgeport sits on 1/4 to 1/2 acre of land. So if we just use a 1/4 acre as a guideline, that would mean that each acre of residential land in Bridgeport has a property tax base of about $1.2 million. That's total per acre. So the campaign ad mentioned that the Staley neighborhood of Clarksburg was being too dense. The standard lots in Staley are about 1/10 of an acre, and I know this because I owned a house with the fairly rare double lot in Staley. The average home price in Staley right now, I looked up, I verified this in recent years, $135,000. So 10 times 135 means a tax base of $1.35 million per acre. That means that Staley has a higher per acre property tax base than most of Bridgeport. That's a dirty little secret folks don't want you knowing about, for whatever reason. So population density and its relationship to the cost of public services has been studied for 2-3 decades at least in many different countries. And it's well known that low density places are very expensive to maintain. That's part of West Virginia's problem is we have so many miles of road per person. It's just insane how much paved road and a gravel road that we have, how many bridges we have to maintain. It's a problem in Germany. Rural areas, just like here, just like in the United States, get a subsidy because they often can't support their own infrastructure. And that's okay because society still needs the logs, the coal, the whatever comes out of these neighborhoods. I'm just stating a fact. Low density places are expensive. Now, if everyone in your community is rich, that's not a problem. Well, by the way, if you haven't noticed, Clarksburg isn't rich, so it is a problem. Right around the density of Clarksburg, things start to even out. Clarksburg is denser significantly than Bridgeport. It has about 3,200 people per square mile in the settlement area, not counting all the hills and stuff that don't have anyone or almost no one living on them. And the data, worldwide data, shows that in a developed country, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 people per square mile, uh, adding density also raises your cost. So, instead of a 4-inch water pipe, you might need to lay a 6-inch water pipe. You might need street lights, stop lights instead of stop signs. So, Germany, Japan, highly like dense areas, they've found that generally as you double population density, you save about 6% on cost per person. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you go from the population density of Clarksburg, 3,200 people, to the place where I live at over 70,000, it's a 25-30% savings per person to the city government. The point of all this is that the data and the research, fact-based thinking, does not support the idea that lower density is cheaper. The exact opposite is true. Now, I admit that if your population density exists in a refugee camp, you're not going to break even on your tax base. You're going to have some problems there. You're going to need an outside subsidy. And if you're subdividing homes just to put, unemployed drug addicts in there who do nothing but steal from the neighbors for the next fix, it's not going to help your community. They're going to be a net drain on your community. I get that. And that's part of the reason over 10, 12 years ago, I started talking on Facebook back in those days when I was very active on Facebook. Maybe we need a moratorium on subdividing homes in some of the more residential areas of Clarksburg. I didn't say we didn't need density or that density was bad. I just said that density needs to be shifted toward downtown and along roads, places had police patrols, good lighting, mass transit. And so the current proposal is a really stripped down, dumbed down version of what I actually tried to say. The bigger problem is that the current proposal doesn't just stop new density. It actually wants to take density backwards. It wants to reduce the density of Clarksburg. How do you think you're going to get a bigger lot in Clarksburg? You're going to get bigger single-family home lots in Clarksburg. Is a Jolly Green Giant going to come down out of the sky, Paul Bunyan, and he's going to walk over and he's going to stretch your yard? The two of them, they're going to stretch it out and make it bigger. They're going to make the earth bigger. Is that how you get a bigger yard? Y'all got neighbors, right? You got to stretch each. That's absurd. The way you're getting bigger yards is you're taking your neighbor's property. Is that a good investment? Take it legally through the normal means of buying it. Would Batty Wright, certified financial advisor, tell you that's a wise investment? Let's say the house next to you is vacant and hasn't been improved, and it's starting to get a little bit run down, and you can buy it for $50,000. you'd need to spend another $15,000 to tear it down. That's $65,000. So if you increase the size of your yard from 2/10 of an acre to 3/10 of an acre, is that gonna add $65,000 of property value to your house to make up for what you spent? Are you gonna break even on that deal? No, you're not. Now it might be worth it to you if it's a $15,000 home that's fallen in on itself, or it's got what you call backpackers living in it. I get that. I get that. The point is, it's not making you wealthier, really, to buy that property. Everyone says, well, that's why you have the city do it. You shift that burden onto the taxpayer. Because the taxpayer Clarksburg just has all this money to spare. There's hundreds of homes in Clarksburg that are vacant. I forget the number. I've done this number. I've done videos on it. I've done update videos on it. But it's going to take at least 10 million, at least, to demolish the houses that we know are vacant right now. And while you're in the process of doing that, more homes are going to come vacant because old people are dying. They're moving away. The baby boomer generation is starting to pass, unfortunately. And you'll get to the bottom of that stack in 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe if you really go all out, whole hog, spending $1 million a year or something, you might get it done in 15 years. And when you get there, you still won't be Bridgeport. You'll be a town with fewer people than Bridgeport. Have all old houses all spread out away from each other, a bunch of demo lots, without enough tax base to support your streets, your water, your sewer. So what kind of plan is this really? Have a good evening, I guess. I'll holler at you later.